Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2024 Disability Community Forum. We are just so delighted that you can be here today, whether you're in the room with us physically or in the room with us on Zoom. We can see your faces if you have your screens on or a profile picture, and we're just so glad that so many of you have joined us today. My name is Andrea Patton. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Disabilities Commission, and I just want to start with a few housekeeping notes. We do have ASL interpretation, both in room and in Zoom room. So if you need interpretation, grab us and let us know. We also have captions on the screen here. We have a link if you would prefer to pull them up on your personal device. Grab me when I'm done making the housekeeping announcements. We also have a low sensory room. If there is overstimulation in this room, there is a room up on the second floor, room 255. The Zoom is set up in that room, so you will still be able to watch what we are doing down here. You can turn off the lights, sit in there alone. That is room 255 if you would like to go up there. With that, I'm going to hand it off to our Disability Commissioner and fearless leader, Kristen McCosh. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you, Andrea. I'd like to welcome everybody here to our annual Disability Community Forum. My name is Kristen McCosh, and I'm the Disability Commissioner and ADA Title II Coordinator for the city. And I want to say that we really love this event, my staff and I, because it's our chance to listen to the community. We want to hear input from you on what we're doing well, what things we need to work on, and any ideas that you have for improving access and inclusion in the city of Boston.
Recording in progress.
This event really has two big highlights for me. The first is listening to you all, and the second is getting a chance to have you meet our advisory board. Our advisory board is made up of 13 community members who either have disabilities or have relatives with disabilities, and they have a public meeting every month to inform us of the issues that are important in their communities. They represent different neighborhoods, diverse abilities, and everything else that is great in Boston. They are our eyes and ears of the neighborhood. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to have them each introduce themselves. I'd like to have them say their name, what neighborhood they come from, and what their particular issues of advocacy are that they work on the board. So first, I'm going to hand it to our board chairperson, Wesley Ireland.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McCosh. As the Commissioner said, my name is Wesley, and I'm using American Sign Language on this community forum. You can hear the voice of a female interpreter who is interpreting into English for me. I'm deaf, and I live in the North End. And my contribution to the Disability Commission, I tend to focus on communication access and communication access needs in the city, particularly as it pertains to deaf and hard of hearing community. So that's me.
Great. Thanks, Wes, and thanks, Commissioner. Great to be part of this event. My name is Jerry Boyd. I live in West Roxbury, and I focus on many different types of things, but mainly on transportation access for persons with disabilities, as well as personal care attendant issues.
My name is Carl Richardson. I live in Brighton. I am a person with a dual sensory loss, a vision and hearing loss. I identify as a deaf-blind individual, as an individual who is deaf-blind. And I am the secretary, although thank God I don't have to officially take minutes, and because you'd be in trouble. And I just try to support the commissioner and the other advisory members where I can on a broad number of issues, from communication access to web access to transportation access, sidewalk access, whatever is relevant, because our role as the Disability Commission is to focus on disabilities from a disability cross perspective across the whole entire thing and look at universal design to enhance it for everyone.
I'm Richard Glovsky. I live in Back Bay, a member of the commission, and I am hearing impaired from spinal meningitis. My interest in the commission is similar to Carl's in that I look for ways to that we can influence the general community to be more understanding and knowledgeable about what the disabled go through every day so we can build a consensus for the work we do. If I have a particular interest, it has to do with children with disabilities, both mental and physical.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Kim. I live in the North End, and I'm on the commission representing caregivers and family members with children with disabilities. I have 2 children that attend Boston Public Schools.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zaria Amir Hosseini. I describe myself as a person with a disability, physical disability. For those of you who are remote, I would describe myself as a person with short brown hair, sweater. I think it's a good practice for us to just keep in mind that some of our audience members may not be able to see us, so it would be great to describe ourselves at these events. So I live in South Boston, and my primary interest is in healthcare. I work at Mass General Hospital with patients with disabilities. So, and I'm happy to be part of this group.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Paul Karen. I serve as the vice chairman of the board and as an advocate for mental health. Both past and present family members in my life have that. I live in the West End. I've been on the board for 5 years now, work at the Boston Planning and Development Agency, and also a vested member of Laborers Local 151. It's the oldest laborers local in New England. Thanks for your time today and everyone attending. And if it can ever be any help, feel free to contact the office. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Before we move on, I want to ask Colleen if there are any board members who are attending on Zoom.
Yes. This is Colleen Flanagan, Outreach and Engagement Specialist. We're looking at the participant list, and I don't see any board members, but if you are here, please raise your hand. Nope.
Okay. And if they do come on, we
If
can...
there's any openings, how can someone become one?
There'll be public input later.
Yes, thank you very much. So before we move on to our interactive dialogue, I do want to just highlight a few things from our annual report. This forum every year gives us a chance to report out to you about the things we've accomplished over the past year, both in my office and the advisory board. So I do want to give a shout out to my staff. They are all tremendous public servants, dedicated, and just do a great job. They make me look good. So I'll give a shout out to them. They're here today. We have Colleen Flanagan, who, as she said, is our Outreach and Engagement Specialist. Andrea Patton introduced herself. She is the Chief of Staff. We have Patricia Mendez, who is the Director of Architectural Access. We have Sierra Tilton, who is an Architectural Access Specialist. Chris Morowski is our Constituent Support Specialist. And who else am I missing? Kylie Potter is our Parking Program Manager. And Kai Kennedy may be attending online. They can raise their hand if they are on screen. And we have one staff person on vacation, Sarah Leung, who is our Senior Architectural Access Specialist. So with that, yes, thank you. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes to give some highlights of the work that we've accomplished over the past year. We do have copies of our annual report out on the table in the hall for those of you who are here in person. And for those of you online, we will send out a link after the event so you can read for yourself what we've done. So first of all, under programs and services, one thing I want to highlight is that my staff runs the accessible parking program in the city. So if you've ever seen the parking spaces that have the wheelchair symbols, you can know that we oversee that program. We review the applications and approve them and just kind of have a handle on where they are in the city. So one thing we did this year, which is a really big highlight, is we published a map of the on-street accessible parking spaces in businesses and neighborhoods. So there's a link to that in the report, and there's also a link to that on our website. So if you're ever driving around downtown and you need an accessible space, you can refer to the map. We work closely with the elections department, and a few things that we've worked on with them are the accessible vote by mail program that allows people with print disabilities to vote independently from home. And we're defining print disabilities as people who have visual or dexterity disabilities and can't do a ballot independently physically. We've also begun an analysis of the overall election process to look at different points along the way where accessibility may be impacted. So we're going to study that and see how we can make improvements in the future. Under architectural access, we have a dedicated team of the 3 staff I mentioned who are really in the weeds of all the development in Boston. They work on reviewing BPDA projects for big developments. They help constituents who call if somebody has a disability that they've just acquired and needs a ramp. My staff gives guidance on that. They work on access in schools and libraries and other public facilities. They work with the Parks Department and the Boston Centers for Youth and Families to make sure all the city's facilities are accessible. And also, our Director of Architectural Access, Patricia Mendez, serves as the Vice Chair of the Architectural Access Board. And in that role, she's able to get a look at all the variance applications that people submit to see if they can't meet accessibility. She'll weigh in on that. And on that note, I want to say we get a lot of calls from constituents about lack of architectural access, and you can always keep calling us, but in case you don't know, you can also file a complaint at the AAB, and we can talk more about that later, but it's a great resource. Communications access. This is one of our big priorities because as an ADA Title II entity, the City of Boston is required to provide effective communication. We always strive to go beyond that, and we shoot for ideal communication access. On that note, we work very closely with the Office of Language, Access, and Communication. And this year, our office was designated as a Tier 1 language department in the City of Boston, which means all of our staff have been trained on acquiring language translation services and how to communicate virtually using ASL and other devices so we can have communication with people who are deaf and hard of hearing. It's a great project that the mayor has really made a priority. So the city, the Office of Language and Communication Access is doing training with all city departments, and eventually everybody will be trained up and able to communicate in real time with constituents. We also had another year of tax days that support people who use ASL and VIP, which is a visually impaired program. So people with disabilities, if they need extra support, are able to attend those tax days. They can also still attend the other tax days at sites all over the city, but we wanted to offer these just to offer a way of more support in case people needed it. We continue to advocate for access to virtual meetings. All our board meetings are held online, and most of the city's meetings still are held virtually, so we will continue to make that standard. We are here hybridly today, and so it's a great opportunity for folks who couldn't come in person. We welcome them online because we know there are barriers for people with disabilities, and sometimes it can be difficult to get places in person. Just a few more notes. Our annual events, this is our first one of 2024. We also have our ADA Day coming up in July. It's going to be on Wednesday, July 17th on City Hall Plaza from 12 to 2. We hope that you will all come out and attend. It's a great chance for you to meet other people in the disability community, meet some agency folks and organization staff. We really try to connect the disability community with services and resources. Last year, we rolled out our public education campaign called Boston Breaks. It's a campaign to promote awareness of pedestrians with disabilities. And we are continuing the work with Colleen. She's done an amazing job getting out posters and doing trainings, and we will continue to do that to improve safety. We'll hold our, oh yes, thanks, Colleen. Our Civic Engagement Day event will be held in the fall, and we'll also be doing a webinar on pathways to employment with the City of Boston. And then the last thing I really want to highlight is we made tremendous strides this year in one area of our work, and that is in training. Earlier last year, we hired a training specialist in accessibility and inclusion. That is Kai Kennedy, who I mentioned earlier. And Kai has already implemented 15 trainings across multiple city departments. They've been involved in the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet's pilot Civic Academy to train other departments in the city who aren't so in the weeds of equity and inclusion, to train them in accessibility, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And these are departments like Boston Transportation Department or the schools, departments that might not be, really aware of all the things that we work on. So that was a great pilot. It was very successful, and we look forward to seeing what more work will be done there. We've also had Kai give a lunch and learn on women's history, disability-wise, and also a training on neurodiversity. Kai's also working on exterior trainings with groups in the community. They did a training with Spalding Amputee Support Group, and we look forward to more trainings coming up with city departments and with the community. So on that note, I am going to turn it over to Andrea to say a few words about city staff who are in attendance.
Thank you, Commissioner. Oh, that was loud. Oh, thank you. I also just want to shout out the other city departments that are in the physical room or the virtual room. We have community engagement here. We've got the streets cabinet. We have representatives from streets, which includes Boston Transportation and Public Works. We have folks from the BPDA, soon to not be BPDA, but from the planning department here. Mayor's Office of Housing, I also saw. Any other City of Boston stuff? Oh, hello, Workers Empowerment. Good to see you, Mimi. If you're on the Zoom, feel free to raise your hand and I'll shout out your department. I also see state agencies. We have representatives from the T, System-Wide Accessibility Office. We have representatives from the RIDE. Thank you so much for coming. I see representatives from the Mass Office on Disability as well. And I think that is everyone I see from a city or a state agency. Sorry? Yep. And of course, as always, Bill Henning from BCIL is here, along with just a host of leaders that I see here from other community and disability-led organizations. So thank you. Yes, sorry.
Massachusetts Developmental Disabilities Council.
Fantastic. So glad that you could be here today.
MUDS, which is a new thing at MassArt, which is the disability union at MassArt.
Excellent.
Which is the art school in Massachusetts.
Fantastic. Thank you. So Mass Art, Disability Program, and Developmental Disability Council, the Mass Developmental Disability Council. Veteran Services from the City of Boston. Thank you so much for being here as well. So I just wanted to highlight those folks to make sure that you know, it's not just, who's raising their hand? Okay. Thank you, Attorney General's Office. So, and Boston Tax Help Coalition. So Commissioner talked about the VIP tax days and the deaf tax days. So the folks who put those on are in the room. And finally, I'm told Office of Emergency Management. So thank you all for coming. And I just wanted to, highlight those folks to say it's not just the Disability Commission at the City of Boston who cares and pays attention to access. It really is truly all of these and more. Folks who couldn't come today, but who will review the recording, who will be in meetings with us. It really is a team effort. So Commissioner, if you want to start with some of our pre-submitted questions, we can go from there.
I will. Just one moment before we do that. I would like to ask any city staff who are in the Zoom room to please put their names and information in the chat so people on screen can see that. And we'll have their contact information. I also want to give a quick shout out to the board's work from 2023. It's the last bullet on our annual report, but I wanted to just highlight a few of things that they did. They had their election of officers. As I mentioned, Wes is the chairperson. Paul Karen is our vice chair. Carl is our secretary. And Juan Carlos Ramirez is our treasurer, although we don't have any funding. So that is the board. And some of the things that they've done, they've had presentations throughout the year from healthcare experiences of people with disabilities by Dr. Lisa Iazzoni. BPS, Boston Public Schools, have come to talk about transportation for students with disabilities. They've heard from Fenway Park about programmatic access, BCIL, anti-discrimination work in healthcare, and Colleen did a Boston Breaks training for this board. They also wrote letters of support for different bills, including an act prohibiting discrimination against adults with disabilities in family and juvenile court, an act building a more accessible Massachusetts, and an act expanding access to trails for all people of all abilities. So I'd like to get a round of applause for our board, please. Okay, and with that, I see that our mayor of Boston has joined us. I'd like to invite Mayor Wu to come up to the front and say a few words.
Good morning, or what time is it? Is it afternoon? Well into afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us once again for one of my favorite convenings all year, and one that both gets to showcase the great work that happens year-round from our commission and board members and community, and also a really important opportunity to receive feedback and be here to hear what should be on the agenda for the year ahead and what the city should be working on. I had a note from the team that when registering for the forum, residents were asked about the top 3 issues that are that you think are most important to people with disabilities in Boston right now. No surprise, housing was at the top of the list, followed by transportation and employment, closely followed by sidewalk accessibility and safety, awareness of non-visible disabilities, and community engagement. In some ways, that has tracked how we think about our approach across all of City Hall, that the infrastructure and the ways that people can have a home to get around, to connect to opportunity, this applies across every community, but especially for our disability community members. Having progress on housing, transportation, employment is the key. We know that building stronger communities is going to require the focus of city government across all of our departments working together, and that it's therefore not the responsibility of the Disability Commission to solve housing, to solve transportation, et cetera. That it's in fact the work of each one of these departments to be intentional about how the designs that they're putting forward, the programs that they're creating, actually serve the needs of everyone, including our residents with disabilities. We envision a city where there are no barriers to healthcare, housing, and transportation, a city where sidewalks are safe for everyone, a city that never stops striving to be more inclusive and more accessible, and we know we can only get there with your help and with your leadership. I want to thank our Disabilities Commission again. Every single day, their work helps connect our residents to opportunity, and their work is also crucial for each and every one of the other departments within the city. They review building plans to make sure accessibility is a priority in housing and common spaces. They work with our transportation department on how those designs are incorporating the needs of our community members. We're spending a lot of time on this hollow sidewalk areaways issue because it is so important and is so complex that, frankly, the can's been kicked down for a long while now, and we are working through all the legal and logistical coordination to make some progress in addressing the many sidewalks that need repairs in this category. And with the City of Boston representative on the MBTA board now, thank you to Mary Skelton Roberts, we are able to shape the conversations about how to make our transportation system more accessible. I am so thankful because civic participation is really the foundation of making every other issue possible. So I'm grateful to be here again and eager to hear what's on your minds and what more the city should be working on. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor Wu. So with that, if the mayor can stay for a few minutes, we have some questions that were pre-submitted that the mayor may have some comments on too. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrea to start with the questions. And this is the part we really value because we really want to hear your input.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. So the first question to your comment there about civic engagement was, what are ways that people in the community can contribute ideas to make the city a better place, a more accessible place? What are places that people with disabilities can get involved?
Well, one very easy point of entry is with the very experts that we have in the room right here. Our commission has an advisory group, and can you remind me, Commissioner, of the dates and?
We have public meetings on a Wednesday every month in the evening on Zoom. It's not the same Wednesday every month, but it's usually in the middle of the month, and we have the calendar on boston.gov/disability.
Okay, so that's one place if you are just looking to plug right in with some of the conversations happening today. We also, many of our departments have opportunities to either be part of an advisory group or share your feedback on a particular project that's happening. If you wanted to ask us in particular, you could either connect with the commission here to be sort of connected with a different department in particular, or you could also reach out directly. If you live in the city of Boston, you also have a neighborhood liaison that is meant to be a first point of contact for any question that you have, even if it ends up not being a city issue. Our neighborhood liaisons can be the folks who can connect you to other levels of government as well, or other city departments. And so that information is also available on the city website, the contact information for your neighborhood liaison. If it is possible for scheduling and for you to be able to get there, we also are currently in our neighborhood coffee hours period. It's basically all through the rest of this month. We have a coffee hour in a park and accessible open space in neighborhoods throughout the city. It's about an hour where I will spend some time and usually try to bring as many of our cabinet chiefs and department heads as possible. I see some of the folks here who are at our Mattapan one earlier this morning and who have come as well. That's a chance where we'll have different information tables about services or programs that are available, and a chance to ask questions and get connected and see city leaders in person as well. Commissioner, what would you add? What other ways to get involved?
One thing I would add is that Mayor Wu mentioned the coffee hours and events like this where you can meet directly with the mayor and with other city leaders from different departments. And I want to say that is very unique to Boston. A lot of mayors don't spend time like this. They do a lot of meets and greets, but to actually have conversations with the mayor is something that I would encourage you to take advantage of, because I know from experience that Mayor Wu listens to input. So I really want to encourage everyone to get out and do that. Andrea and I sit on a committee. It's called the Coalition of Mayors Municipal Offices of People with Disabilities. It's made up of 15 large cities across the country, disability commissioners, and we meet monthly to talk about issues. And I know just from these conversations that we have a really dedicated team who is available to residents, so please take advantage of that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Andrea for another pre-submitted question.
Thanks, Commissioner. So the next question is about 311. Someone says they've reported many issues to 311, like crosswalks that need restriped, but they feel like they're not getting closed. So what can they do when they see these issues?
Okay, this is a great question, because the short answer is please continue submitting everything through 311. That is the most effective, direct, efficient way to get your concerns directly to the departments that are receiving it. The long answer is that sometimes the things that come in have unique characteristics about it that can require a little bit more time, or needing to talk to the neighborhood around the area, or to figure out how that lines up with the schedule for repainting crosswalks or fixing the streets. But what you should be able to do is find out why it's taking so long. So if you have submitted a 311 request multiple times, or if you submitted it once and it just feels like it's taking an unusual amount of time, please reach out as well. And I'll talk to the team so we can think about how we proactively reach out when this is the case. So it's not just all on you to do it, but if you were curious, you could reach out and follow up. You can either, in addition to the 311 app, you can call 311 directly, and then they can connect you to the department that might have more context on it, or they can take your information and then follow up with you about why it's taking a little bit longer. But for each one of the types of services that we provide through 311, we also have standards for how quickly they're supposed to be resolved. So for example, pothole requests are supposed to be resolved within 24 hours. The average is a little bit over 24 hours, but it's between 24 and 48, and we hold ourselves to very high goals. So we're always trying to push to make sure that's right. Crosswalks and some of the other items, depending on how complex it is, can take a little longer, but usually if it is going beyond what the agreement and standard that we've set for ourselves is, there's some other reason, and we'd love to make sure you understand why it is, what that reason is, and that we are working on it. So we'd love to follow up with you.
Yes, and one thing I'll add is the mayor mentioned that 311 is available through an app, it's available through phone, and also online. So we really emphasize, as I said earlier, communication access and multimodal ways to get in touch with the city. So we know some people prefer an old-fashioned phone call. Other people just like to use a computer or their phone. You can take pictures with your phone and upload issues. And just to emphasize, I'll give an example of something the mayor said, like about a curb ramp. We get a lot of complaints that curb ramps are inaccessible. So if it's just a broken piece of concrete, we can work with the Public Works team to go out and patch it. And we can do those really quickly. But if it's an issue where a curb ramp is not accessible at all, it is a missing curb ramp, those take longer because we have to design them. We have to get the architects and engineers involved in design. Then we have to put it out to public bid because it's public money. So things like that, even though you may think the city isn't working on them, they are in the pipeline. And we can always do a better job communicating that with everybody. But I want you to know that we take every piece of input that we get seriously. We work on them. We don't just, shuffle them away. Like the mayor said, things aren't getting kicked down the road. We are working on them. And we're happy to always communicate this to you. And on that note, we're also working on this year an update to our ADA transition plan. The city did an original transition plan in 1993 that was required when the ADA was passed in 1990. But it's a really old document, and it's not very accessible. It's not easy to read. So we just put out a request for proposals to get a consultant to update the transition plan. So it will be on our website. It will be a living document. We'll add to it as more buildings become more accessible. And we're really excited about this project, so stay tuned for more information on that. And I will turn to Andrea. Do you have one more question for the mayor?
We have a question from the audience about affordable housing, which I know is something hot on the mayor's mind. Ed, are you in the room? Would you like to ask your question? Yep, either microphone.
Can you pick it up?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. My name's Ed Passanese. Some of you have met me. I live at the Forbes building. 545 Center Street, and we've been working. I've been living there since 2007. Yeah, so far, a while. So the concern I have as a person with a disability, I have epilepsy, is that I think we need, and I know you're working on it, we need more. There's not enough affordable housing. Everybody knows. I know you're working on it. But my concern at the Ford's building is like, and this is a fact, I researched it, if you live in, when I moved in 2007, it was 30%, which I can afford. But if anybody, because it's a private developer, my understanding is that if I or anyone moved, then it would automatically become a market rate apartment, which I think is like, don't quote me, I think it was like, it's 2,500 one bedroom and 2 bedrooms, 3,500. So very quickly you would displace many people with disabilities or elders or people with fixed income. So I'm concerned. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much for coming. It's a great point, and one that's been really intense for several years now. I know I've personally been to multiple rallies outside the Forbes building, and it's one of these complicated situations where in the past, the city tended to try to find ways to make market rate housing affordable. And one tool that they would use a lot more was called expiring use. And so they would sign the contract with the developer that the developer would promise to keep it affordable, but that would expire after, often the terms were 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years. And then at that point, it's all bets are off in terms of whether that developer is, or whoever owns the building 20, 30, or 40 years later is willing to come back to the table to renegotiate it. With this particular property owner, the city has been working so hard to try to come to agreement and make sure that the expiring use doesn't expire. Sheila Dillon is putting a lot of her energy and her team's energy on this, and we've been working with the elected officials at all levels. The State House has gotten involved as well. So it's a matter of trying to find some of the funding that would make it financially possible for the affordability to continue, and then to make sure that we are holding to this deal. So I know it's still in progress, and it's still something that everyone's working on. The big picture for me is that we don't want expiring use to be the predominant tool for affordability in the city, because even if, again, not wanting to kick things down to a future generation, even if it's 20 years, we're just delaying that point of pain until someone else has to deal with it. And so the city's approach now is to use our federal funding that's available and use mitigation funding that's available to make units permanently affordable. Under Sheila Dillon and Chief Arthur Jemison and Kenzie Bach, who runs our Boston Housing Authority, this last year, we approved more units of permanently affordable housing than in the last 25 years. And so we are continuing to try to put that money forward and make that happen everywhere we can, including when there are units that are market rate right now, but have been affordable for residents. In East Boston, for example, over 100 units like that, all in one portfolio, were purchased with some city funding, with state, with others, to be permanently run and maintained at that level forever by a nonprofit. And so we're getting really creative about how we can use partnerships also to not just build new affordable housing, but to keep the ones that we have, and even to add more through market rate housing and turning it into affordable housing. So it's a big, big focus area, and so much of what you hear us talking about with zoning and squares and streets and BPDA reform ultimately is about housing affordability.
Thank you for all your good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
And thank you for that question.
I'll just add on to that. Again, this is one of those issues that is not visible, but it's worked on all the time. And my office led a task force called the Disability Housing Task Force. Bill Henning worked on it with us, and we worked on 3 priorities: making sure that housing in Boston was affordable, accessible, and available. And that work continues. We do just want to jump to the Zoom room, so we include everybody in this forum. And Andrew, I believe we have one final question for Mayor Wu.
Yes, we do. We are going to go to the Zoom room. Thank you, Commissioner. We have a question. With warmer days ahead, are there any accessibility requirements for outdoor dining?
Yes, the commissioner and her team are well steeped in this. And I will, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner, on any of these details, but basically, let's say before the pandemic, there were very, very few outdoor patios or any outdoor dining because everything was case by case by case, and the requirements were, we heard, more work than it was worth for most of the restaurant owners in the neighborhoods. During the pandemic, when all of the indoor restaurant seating got shut down for public safety and public health, then the state passed an emergency temporary law to allow outdoor dining all over the place, wherever possible, without many standards at all. That was meant primarily as a way to save restaurants, save small businesses. It did not include as stringent of protections around accessibility as our standards usually are for permanent programs. That was in place for 2 years, and then since then, the state has reauthorized, or the city has reauthorized with the state outdoor dining, but in a permanent program and no longer that emergency temporary program. That permanent program does require full accessibility, and that means from, is it yes or no? No? Anyway, that requires whether it's the ability to access the seating from the right heights or ramps. We want to make sure that as we've built out this program that it is real. Commissioner, what would you add or correct?
I would just add that we're still in the process of working on the permanent program, but access is required. So if anybody sees a situation that's not accessible in outdoor dining, whether it's a step down to the street without a ramp, or if it's an issue of not an accessible table, please call 311, or you can always call our office. So with that, I'd like to ask everyone to give a big round of applause for Mayor Wu, and we thank her for her time. Thank you, Mayor. And again, coffee hours are still going on for the next month or so please take advantage and you'll get to speak with the mayor directly. One more thing I'd like to do is, I saw our chief here. Is she still here? Chief Mary Angeli, our Chief of Equity and
She was here somewhere. There she is.
Okay. I just want to shout her out and see if she wants to say a few words of greeting.
Thank you, Mayor Wu. Thank you, Commissioner, and to our advisory board. Thank you so much for being here. I always look forward to this annual event because it is time again an opportunity to see how far we have come with technology. I don't know if you've seen, but there's well over 50 people participating virtually. So thank you all for being here as well. I don't know what camera I should look at right now, but thank you for participating here and for everybody in person as well. Under the leadership of Commissioner McCosh and the incredible team at Disabilities with the beautiful blue polos that they have yet to get me one of. I'm always gonna throw a little bit of shade. One day I'm gonna get the swag. My job is easy, right? I get to just follow their leadership, follow their advice that is being led by you. And so please, there's no such thing as a hard question. If we don't have an answer, we're honest. We tell you we don't know, but we will come back to you. And so thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chief. And you may remember, let's give a round of applause for our Chief. A few years ago, our department moved from Human Services into Equity and Inclusion. And we did that because we don't really provide services, so to speak, like Age Strong or BCYF does. We work on systemic access. So we have a small staff, 9 of us. So since we can't do everything, we don't build streets, we don't build sidewalks, we don't run elections, but we make sure that all the other departments, everything they do is accessible. So it's really, it's been great elevating disability into equity and inclusion, because now we talk about diversity, equity, and accessibility when we talk about inclusion. So we're thrilled to be in this cabinet. And okay, so now I think we've done all our reporting out, and we can take some more questions.
Yeah, so we'll go to questions in the room, and then to our pre-submitted, and then to Zoom. We like to circle through them. So the first question, the first person who signed up to ask a question is Barbara Critchlow. So if you'd like to ask your question.
Yes, I live in Mattapan, and I brought this question to the forum last year, and the person that gave the answer was not somebody from the board. And so I decided this year I'd show up and ask the question again. There was a project to put a bus line down the middle of Blue Hill Avenue. I was on the committee in 2011 when the MBTA tried to do the same thing, and they made some changes that I thought were appropriate. But now the idea is still to put a bus line down the middle of Blue Hill Avenue. And my concern is people stepping off the curb on Blue Hill Avenue into traffic to get to the bus lane. And the number of bus stops are also going to be cut back. My concern is that what does this board think of this project? And I'd like to just hear what you all have to say. I have been given an answer, but I just can't believe what I was told.
I'm going to turn that over to my chief of staff, because she's been working with the different departments who are involved in these projects.
Yeah, hi. Again, my name's Andrea, and I'm the Chief of Staff for the department. So our architectural access team of 3 meets regularly with the Boston Transportation Department and the T to discuss projects like these. So the proposal for the center running bus lane is, I don't know if you're familiar with like the E-Line, E-Branch Green Line stations. The ones at the very end that are literally in the middle of the road is not what's being proposed for Blue Hill Ave. They're much closer to, so it's gonna be closer to those big stations that exist elsewhere on the Green Line. So for each one of those stations, there are gonna be 2 crossings, 2 crosswalks with fully compliant curb ramps, raised crossings actually to be really speed bumps so you won't even have to step down because there'll be speed bumps as crosswalks to slow cars down. There'll be big wide stations that have concrete barriers and bus shelters over them that might not exist on the stations right now, so that they're covered and really much more comfortable places to be and safer places to be because they will have the concrete barriers that don't exist right now between the travel or the parking lane and the regular sidewalk. So the city is putting them in because they are safer and more efficient for bus riders. We're working closely with the System-Wide Accessibility Office at the T, who have their own concerns, right, about accessing these stations that their buses will be using. And we meet regularly with them to think about the designs. But as I'm sure you know better than anyone if you're in the community, there are a lot of community engagement meetings coming to continue to refine those design styles for the proposal. So that's our office's involvement with that.
Yeah, but my concern is, have you ever been on Blue Hill Avenue? Yeah. I mean, I've lived in Mattapan for over 50 years. I've been in Boston since the 40s. And Blue Hill Avenue is not an easily traveled roadway. There are accidents, there are other issues. I don't see that this project is a benefit to anybody using transportation. The other idea of being picked up at the curb was a lot better. And the other issue is that if we could get people, a police department or BTD to ticket the people who park at the bus stops, then you would have, then there would be that accessibility where somebody can actually get on the bus. And I'm talking about from children, adults, people with disabilities, families can get on the bus safely. And that was a design considered by the MBTA.
Yep, I completely understand. Again, the transportation department will have a lot more of this data on hand at the meetings focused on this project, but all the data that we have, both from Columbus Ave and from other cities, show that these center running lanes are in many ways safer and more accessible than a classic sidewalk bus. So happy to talk more with you offline. I just want to make sure we get to everyone's questions. Exactly. But as a commission, we're closely involved in making sure these are the best stations they can possibly be for our constituents. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Barbara.
Okay. So I was going to go to a pre-submitted question, and then we'll go to a Zoom question. So pre-submitted question, why are there no public bathrooms in Boston? What is the public bathroom policy?
Wow, that's a great question. And we have a great answer. So many buildings in Boston have bathrooms that are accessible to the public. So first of all, any city building that you see, like a library or even a police station, they have bathrooms that the public can use. Also hotels, many of them like on the waterfront and in commercial areas in Boston have bathrooms that are available for the public. So even though you may not see like an individual bathroom built out, there are many buildings that have bathrooms that are required to allow the public to use them. So we have a map online. It's actually on boston.gov/departments/public-restrooms, but we will put the link in the chat and we can also send that link out. We'll link it in our annual report, and then when we mail that out to everybody after the forum, they'll have that information. So take advantage of it because it also lists accessibility under each bathroom. So it's great. It's a great resource because we know people may be planning activities outside all day and everybody needs to use the bathroom. So now we have a public map that's available to find the location that you're looking for. Would you add anything to that, Andrea?
Just that the map was a collaboration with the Age Strong Department. So there's a separate commission that used to be known as the Elderly Commission. But obviously we know that there can be some overlap between the disability community and the aging community. And so it was a really great collaboration with them. And we do work with them regularly on projects like that. So thanks for that pre-submitted question. Looking to the Zoom chat, give me a second to find it. Otherwise, we'll go to a question in the room. Keep looking at the Zoom, but in the meantime, we can go to, Wes, you signed up to ask a question, chair of the board. Would you like to make a comment or pose a question?
I don't remember signing up for a question, actually. I did not, I don't think.
No worries. Any comments you'd like to make while I try to find our next question? No pressure.
Well, yes, I have a comment about the previous question with the public restrooms. I do agree that it's not visible, and they are hard to see when they're invisible, but but it's really clean. It's a way to access public facilities that are safe and clean in the community. So it's clean, but you need to know when to use it and where. So I just wanted to make that comment in addition.
Yes, so we can definitely do a better job getting this information out. It's a newer map. I mean, it's probably been online for a few years now, but we will make that a point to get it out on social media and in our outreach. We have a lot of outreach that we do regularly, so we will definitely put that in our rotation. Before we go to our next question, I want to ask, do any other board members have anything they want to comment on? Anything you want to talk about related to the questions, or anything you want to share with the audience? Paul?
Yeah, as far as sidewalks
Can you
go,
use the mic, Paul?
Pardon? Oh, as far as sidewalks go, I know the mayor's office and city council have been doing a great job whenever they get the 311 calls to repair and help with any kind of access. I know personally, people have called me and thanked me for helping, but it's also due to the mayor and the city council for acting so quickly on the 311 calls.
And Paul works in the BPDA. What's your role there, Paul?
I'm a supervisor of administrative services, so it's pretty much internal operations, but I've been included with Commissioner McCosh in some Article 80 suggestions and issues to help out any kind of knowledge along the way.
Great, thank you, Paul. Anyone else have any comments? Yep, go ahead.
I just want to mention in terms of access to our meetings, there is a section at the end of each meeting for any member of the public to make a comment or ask questions or whatever they'd like to air with us. So in addition to what was described by the Commissioner about how our meetings run, you should all know that if you do participate in those meetings, you have an opportunity to say something, whatever is on your mind.
Yep, absolutely. We encourage public comment. We have a pretty standard agenda, which includes a presentation by a city department so that the board can understand what different departments are working on and they can spread the word to their communities. And then we give a commissioner's report, an architectural access report, and then priorities that the board wants to work on. And then we have public comment. So we encourage everybody to attend. And I do see a hand in the room and wondering if we have Zoom, so I'll throw it to you, Andrea.
Yep, so we have a hand in the room, and before that person raised their hand, we had someone DM saying they'd like to be unmuted to ask their question. So we'll go first to Simon. Oh, Simon Escobar, can you, there, you want to see if he's ready to voice his question? Okay. Oh.
Yes, I was supposed to be there, but I am doing it from Zoom. And I'm just reiterating what Paul just said, because I've been in the Kenmore Fenway for about 10 years, over 10 years. And don't remember who was told by, but they said after April 15th, they will start repainting the remarkings of the crosswalks, which is a big concern for someone that lives on their own, independent, and is blind or legally blind or visually impaired, especially with the games going back on now with the Red Sox and concerts and shows. And some of the drivers sometimes let pedestrians go by, or sometimes they don't, or they'll be on top of it because they're faded.
Thank you, Simon. If we understood, you were cutting a little bit in and out. What we heard and understood was that you were talking about repainting crosswalks and the importance of repainting crosswalks that will start happening after April 15th because of the weather. Do we understand that correctly?
Yeah, that's what I was told.
Yep. So this is Andrea. Thank you for that question. Yes. So a lot of our construction, which crosswalk paint is sort of considered construction, can't happen in the cold weather. It's the unfortunate reality of living where we do. But literally, if it's too cold, asphalt won't settle, concrete won't ever harden, and that paint won't stay in place. So if you don't see things happening in the winter, that's probably why. It can't. It won't happen scientifically. So yes, lots of construction, including crosswalk repainting, happens mostly from April 15th to November 15th.
And I will just add really quickly that Patricia Mendez on our staff works very closely with City Department on accessible pedestrian signals. So we make sure that when we get requests, we look into them. We make sure that busy intersections have them. And any new crossings that are installed will have accessible pedestrian signals. So believe me when I say we touch every department in the city. We're always paying attention to pedestrian access. It's one of our biggest priorities. And like Andrea said earlier, it's not only our priority, it's also priority of the Transportation Department, Public Works Department, Public Health Commission, BCYF, every department that works on safety, accessibility, and community really pays attention to these things.
Okay, so going next to our sign-in sheet, and I am seeing some hands in the room. We're going through our pre-sign up, the folks who signed up when they signed in, and then. Okay, we can grab. I'm happy to.
Which was related to their question.
Okay, if you'd like to ask your question, and then we'll go to the list. Would you please use a microphone? Thank you.
I have a question. What are we going to do with this has been an issue for years at MassArt around that area. What are we going to do with Huntington Ave? Because right on the crosswalk of Huntington Ave, there's a huge bump that literally, I've fallen over it because I was trying to rush to class. It's really hideous. It's a really big divot, and Boston has done nothing about it. And it's right near the bus line.
Do you have an address on that?
It's right outside the Kennedy.
Okay, like a street number?
It's right outside the Kennedy at MassArt.
Okay.
In between the Heath Street station and the MassArt building.
Okay, if you could get an address, and maybe I could give you my email, and maybe put something into 311 and contact Councilor Durkin for you. And we'll just go from there. I think that's our district. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul. We'll definitely get you connected. I will also note that there is some jurisdictional challenges in that area because the T and the green line being there, so that sometimes can make construction projects just a little more complicated. So that could be why it's slowing things down. But to go to our sign-in sheet, Angela Francis, if you're still here. Okay. Okay, if Angela's not in the room, and then we'll go after that to you next, Mimi, because you had signed up. But yes, would you like to ask your question?
I have a microphone behind you.
Thank you guys so much. Commissioner, great work. Team, great work. I have two, inclusion, accessibility. I'm from the Authentic Caribbean Foundation, and we run events. And for inclusion and accessibility to festivals and events, will the city ensure that on the board of approval of events that there is a disability, ensuring that these events have access and disability? Why I say, I work with the city of Worcester also, and I'm so impressed that it's mandatory when you're putting on an event that persons with disability will be able to access the events, and also ASL. And one of the things we're having too is access to ASL interpreters. And I hope the city will ensure that that's a mandate on all events, all entertainment, to consider persons with disability who want to come out and enjoy the festival and enjoy the events also. So hopefully. And another thing too, what are we doing with new developments in terms of parking space? One prime example is Seaport. There is only 3 disability spots in Seaport. I don't know if you guys have seen that. So Seaport should have more parking spots. Thank you.
I'm going to start with the second question, and then I'm going to turn the first question over to my staff. So in regards to parking, I mentioned earlier that my office oversees the accessible parking program in the city. However, like Andrea mentioned a minute ago, there are a lot of different jurisdictions in Boston. Streets aren't only owned by the city of Boston, they're also owned by the state, MassDOT, the Department of Transportation. They're owned by private buildings and private entities. They're owned by the T. They're owned by actually the BRA, the Boston Redevelopment Authority, owns some streets. So when we're talking about the Seaport in particular, most of the Seaport is either Massport, the Port Authority, or private ownership. So we do have some accessible parking spots on like Sleeper Street and Northern Ave, but the majority of the parking down there is privately owned or owned by the state. So we do collaborate with different entities, with MassDOT and with the state, but that is a particularly challenging area. I'm glad you raised it because it's something that's been like on our list to really try to do some more work on, but I can't make any promises because it's not under our control. And then your first question, I'm going to turn to Andrea. Do you have any comments on that one?
I'm so sorry. I had to step out to speak with someone. The first question was?
Can you summarize it again? It's special events.
If special events permits that a disability have access.
A special event's required to have accessibility.
Yeah.
Worcester does it. City of Worcester does it.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot put on an event without you ensure that the venue have access to wheelchair and ASL interpreters.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's a little, in Boston, the biggest thing is if you're applying for a special event on city property, then we are pretty deeply involved in making sure that it's accessible because it's on public property and it's on ours. Events that are on private property are a little bit harder to enforce all of those rules because they apply differently depending on who's hosting. That said, I do know, for example, embedded in the special events application, no matter where you're having it, is a question about how many accessible porta potties you're having, if you're gonna, have portable toilets, things like that. There's actually the Equity and Inclusion Cabinet is hosting a webinar around the special events permitting process. It's a webinar, Chief? A webinar with multiple languages interpretation already booked to help folks understand this process. So if you have more questions about it, I'll give you that link and you can attend, and special events permitting office will be present. So it's a great place. We'll get you that link.
I know that's one thing that Mayor Wu is committed to, is demystifying all the city processes, whether it's to host an event or to apply for housing or everything in between. So we are definitely working on that to make all the city services more accessible to people, residents, and people who want to do events. So yes, that is something we're working on. And you also mentioned ASL, American Sign Language. That is a challenge, really, we've heard nationally. There's a shortage of interpreters. It's difficult to get them if there's not a lot of lead time. So we definitely can feel your pain when it comes to ASL, but we do work. We work hard on that with our partners in the city and the state, and also with new technology. We're able to plug in some holes with virtual interpreting and things like that. Is there anything you'd add on that, Andrea?
If you don't already know that MCDHH, the Mass Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, is a nonprofit, because they're a state agency, to connect anyone to interpreters. So regardless of whether you're a city agency, an official 501c3, or just having an event that you want an interpreter at, you can contact them to connect you with an available interpreter. So We do have a question in the Zoom. Sally Greenhouse will send you a request to unmute. Oh, if you put your hand back up, it'll be easier to find you, so we can send you a request to unmute. We should have time for that question. I saw Angela came back in, so we'll go to your question after Sally. And then, yes, I see you, Mimi. There, we found Sally. Go ahead.
There was a lottery for a new building, a renovation of a former school in Hyde Park called the Pride. Mayor Wu designated 4 disability parking spaces for a property that had 75, give or take 1 apartment rentals in it for ages 62 plus. 4 disability parking spaces are not enough. Something in the policy must be reviewed. I am physically disabled, and I heard it announced that people with cars should get rid of their cars. At that point, that lottery should have been placed on moratorium. There is too much overt discrimination against the physically disabled when it comes to the combination of housing and parking. And the answer is not to tell disabled people that they can take public transportation. Many of us cannot. So if you're looking at the housing that's being renovated and built to add more units, it must be looked at comprehensively. Otherwise, the disabled cannot move there. They cannot enter the lottery. They're being told to sell their cars. That is absurd. Lastly, there are public buildings that do not have 1 disability parking space. Less than 2 years ago, the Suffolk County Housing Court had no disability parking space, 0 disability parking space at a housing court. There was a post office that had no disability parking spaces. This is unconscionable. These issues on parking and the combination of parking and housing need to be addressed. I'm going to conclude with the following. There is a division in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts between the eastern part of the state and the western part of the state. I was harassed out of housing in the Metro Boston area by landlords who were harassing out primarily the demographic of single women who are physically disabled and on Section 8 mobile vouchers, wanting to inflate the rents. I was specifically told that I was too disabled. A lot of women are seeking housing in Western Massachusetts and Eastern Massachusetts. We need to forge new connections between the eastern part of the state and west of Metro West and Worcester so that we can team up when all of these bills get to the State House in July so that we can get them out of joint committee onto the floor and get them voted on finally. Thank you.
Sally, before you mute, can I just ask a quick clarifying question? Was that a lot at the Pride, or are you speaking about on-street spaces?
Oh, okay. So there was no parking lot at the Pride. They did make a provision for people who are disabled of 4 parking spaces specifically designated for the physically disabled. And when I questioned at one of the orientations, how are you going to decide who's going to get those spaces? They're going to be knockdown, drag out fights over that. They had no answer. They said they were working with Mayor Wu to double the number of disability parking spaces. That was not increased. They were left with 4 disability spaces.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I asked just, and then Commish, I'll let you answer, because requirements for lots are set under state building code and ADA. They are, of course, minimums. So if you're somewhere where you could use more spaces in a lot, you can certainly request that the owner go above and beyond, right? Those minimums are minimums for a reason. But Commish, do you want to talk a little about on-street spaces and how we consider the needs for on-street?
Sure. I will also add just one note about parking lots. Like Andrea said, they are a requirement. And if you feel that the building is not meeting that requirement, you can actually file a complaint with the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. They have a specific complaint form just for parking lots. So we would encourage you to do that. And I believe the minimum required is 1 per 25 spaces, 15 spaces, I'm not sure. Patricia, do you know offhand? 1 in 15, so 1 out of 15 spaces, and then it goes up incrementally from there. So yes, Sally, please feel free to complain to the AB if that's the case. I do want to acknowledge your frustration. I use a wheelchair, for those of you who can't see me. I use accessible parking spaces throughout the city. We know curb use is changing. Bike lanes are being installed, spaces are being removed, and it can get frustrating. The city is making a lot of these changes in order to improve green infrastructure so that we cut down on pollution and encourage people to, take bikes or take other modes of transportation like the T. I also understand that people with disabilities can't always take the T. It's very difficult for a lot of people to do so. Unfortunately, it's a reality that parking is limited in the city. No matter where you look, even if we installed 10 accessible spaces in front of that building, they'd all be taken. So we really do our best. We don't remove any parking spaces in the city that are accessible. If bike lanes are going in, for example, we will relocate them if necessary, but we have a pretty hard line with the city that we don't remove them. So we don't want to see a net loss of accessible parking spaces, certainly, but we do understand that it's a challenge and that people with disabilities can't always take the T. So we do work hard to install accessible spaces for those who need them.
Thanks, Commish. And if you'll let me out, one thing I'll add, because this is tied to other questions that we get a lot about the housing discrimination piece that you brought up, Sally. We get the question a lot, where can I complain if I face discrimination, right? The unfortunately long answer is, well, the short answer is it depends. The long answer is there are many different places you might need to go depending on the type of discrimination, the setting of the discrimination, things like that. So the medium answer is feel free to call our office and we can help you determine, if it's an employment case, that goes one place. If it's a restaurant or coffee shop, that's another place. Our office is here to help you figure that out so we can send you to the correct place. Which I will close with, if it's a city program, that's us. So we'll help you find us. You found us. We will be able to help you navigate that if it's a city issue. But so for the housing discrimination, we can help you navigate that as well. Okay, Angela, thank you for coming back. Thank you for waiting patiently. Please ask us your question or give us your comment.
Okay, hello? Okay. One of the questions that I had for the board is, first of all, this is probably for the Disability Commission. How long has the Disability Commission been around, Kristen?
So our office was founded in the 70s, so we've been a city office for a long time. We have grown a lot under Mayor Wu's leadership and over the last few years. When I started 14 years ago, we had 3 staff, and now we have 9, so we've tripled. So there is a real commitment in the city to fund our work and to value our work. The board has been, it was meeting in the 70s as well, and then it sort of fell away, and it was reestablished in 2009 under a state provision that establishes disability commissions in any city or town across the state. And if you want more information on the different cities that have disability commissions, you can get that through the Mass Office on Disability.
Okay. So this will go forward to the next question that I'm having. The next question that I had, which was in terms of diversity. I keep hearing that word diversity, diversity, diversity. What I am not seeing is diversity. So there are tons of individuals out there that are African American, Black, whatever you want to call them, that live in this city, who have been in this city probably for as long as I have, and they're not represented, number one, here. And number two, my main question is, how do we get to them so that they are aware that they can utilize whatever it is that's offered under the Disability Commission. One other last thing is that what I'm also not seeing here, which is very, very important for me, I have a disability that you cannot see. Nobody can see it. So I'm standing out there waiting for the mayor, and two wheelchairs just come and hijack where I'm standing in front of her. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's what we're doing nowadays? I see. I'm not that important.
All right, I have a few ways I can respond to different things you raised. First of all, I'll start with your last comment about non-visible disabilities. We truly appreciate you raising that. We're very aware of that. In one attempt to deal with that, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but we recently concluded a draft policy on data standardization in the city, which means it's going to be a policy of how we collect data on disability. So we had focus groups, we've done research, and what we've figured out is that people with disabilities really want to identify their accessibility needs rather than their diagnosis or the disability. So, for example, if you have a non-visible disability, but one day you might need access to a seat because you can't stand for a long time, we're going to ask those questions. So that is a way to figure out what you need, even though it's not visible. We could also do more awareness about non-visible disabilities, so thank you for raising that issue. But we are really excited about this data project because it will be a way that we can meet people's needs without having to, have you disclose medical information or diagnoses or things like that. So thank you for that. As far as representation on the board, we do have several members who are diverse. They're not in person today. We have one resident who's from Mattapan. I believe it's Paulette from Mattapan. Yeah, she's an African-American woman who does a lot of advocacy in the neighborhood. She's been a Boston resident her whole life. I believe she's gone to Boston Public Schools. She's a wonderful advocate on the board. We also have a person who's an immigrant from Peru. He is Spanish-speaking native, and he brings that lens to the board. Of course, we're always looking for more diversity. As board memberships, they're appointed for 3-year terms. As it's 3 years, not 4, 3. And as those seats expire, we do look to expand our pool of residents so that we ensure representation. Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is we love our disability board. But if you're a person with a disability, you don't have to join the disability board. We would love to have a disability perspective on the Arts Commission, on the Air Pollution Commission, there's a fabulous disability advocate who's part of the Landmarks Commission. There are more than 50 boards and commissions that exist in the city of Boston. So if you are a Boston resident, you can check that out on boston.gov, call our office, we can help direct you to it. But really, we know that disability issues are all of the issues, right? And so we would love to help connect you with a board that meets your needs and interests and skill set, and to really bring that intersectional lens, because a lot of our boards aren't always representative of every neighborhood, of every race, of every gender, of every disability status, and we would love to expand that across the city, not just, of course, we want our disability board to also be representative, but there are a lot of other boards that have open seats right now. Okay, it is just before 3:30, so we have time for, Wes, did you have a comment?
I do. About diversity for the board. I'm also involved with other local nonprofit boards focusing on deaf and hard of hearing community issues. I am the chair for their recruitment and making efforts for diversity amongst their boards as well. Believe it or not, we have outreach to many deaf and hard of hearing individuals and people within the diverse communities, and we have not really received a large response from them for those within the diverse communities. And so we've seen a lack of interest on our boards. And I mentioned that we want to attract people diverse communities, people of color. And we are motivated to do that when we have done outreach to various different boards. We have seen a lack of participation or enthusiasm.
Sounds like there's a lot of room to connect folks and get folks to the right boards where they might be interested in serving. Yeah. Okay, so we have time for one last question. So Joycey, if you'd like to answer your or ask your question, I will give you the mic here for our final one.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joycey. I work at the emergency department at Mass General, basically every weekend, and I'm a coordinator. And one thing that recently came up that I wanted to ask about, and that's in the works through our case managers, is, how can I get like a blind cane for an individual who, may be homeless or doesn't have the resources to be able to get one? Because in the past, I've bought my own cane before I had a guide dog, and it's like $40. It's not very affordable. Do you know how I can get these for some of our patients who may require something like this? Because we offer walkers and wheelchairs, but not canes. And, we talked to Mass Pioneer. They also didn't have a cane that they could give us for one of our patients.
So Joycey, do you mean internally in the hospital?
Internally in the hospital, but also like if there's a community resource as well.
I have one. Carroll Center.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was
yeah.
going to say MCB. You're talking about white canes or walking sticks?
White canes.
White canes. I would get in touch with the Mass Commission for the Blind, but if you want to grab me at the end of the meeting, I'll tell you who to get in touch with, and I'm sure we can work something out.
Thank you.
And then Sorry, did you also want to?
Tina, we'll wait just till afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on, Zari's going to answer, and then yes, I'll go to you.
So actually, I just was going to say that I work at Mass General, and that request has come up before. And one of the concerns is that there are different types of white cane for different individuals. So there is also an issue of liability for equipment and the other equipment to our patients. But we do refer people to Mass Commission for the Blind and the Carroll Center. So I think that would be better, because that way you can get assessed for the right type of cane as opposed to just giving you anything.
Thank you for that context, Zari. So we will definitely have the three of you circle as soon as we're done here. Colleen, you had a final comment?
Yeah. So I'm Adriana Malazzi. I'm the new executive director of equipment, and we actually give out AT now, so white canes count as AT. For those of you who don't know what equipment does, we are a statewide nonprofit agency, and we give gently used equipment such as wheelchairs, shower chairs, and now assistive tech for free. You just have to go on our website and put in the request. So we do have some white cane right now, and that is the perfect example of who we give our equipment to, are people who are homeless and don't have access to resources.
Thank you for that comment, Adriana, and thank you for coming. I know you come every year, and congratulations on your appointment. Yeah, let's give her a round of applause. So the nonprofit that Adriana mentioned is called Requipment. It's a program that provides wheelchairs, walkers, canes to people who need them. It's gently used, donated equipment, and refurbished and given out, as Adriana said. So great resource. We can, provide that link if anyone's interested. And yeah, we encourage people to take advantage of it.
And what a great closing question to summarize the ways that our office can help. We don't have white canes. We don't provide services like that, but we refer to reequipment at least once a week because we know it's such a huge need. And we make those referrals to agencies, whether you're looking to report discrimination, receive support, or just aren't sure who in the city to call. Please, please, please give us a call, shoot us an email. We have a text number now, replaced our TTY. So for folks who may have not be able to use their voice for whatever reason, whatever disability reason, we have a text number now. So we want to be as available to you as we can for whatever questions you have. Commissioner, any closing comments, or board members, any closing comments for the 2024 Disability Community Forum?
I will just make one comment. We didn't really get to touch on it, but it's something that Joycey mentioned, that you had a guide dog. We know some of our board members have guide dogs, some of our staff use guide dogs, and we've seen some complaints about that in recent months, weeks. We get these complaints throughout the year. So our training specialist is doing trainings on that. We're also working with businesses to make sure that they understand the requirements for things like that. So some of our work this year will be focused on not just government services, but making sure that restaurants and businesses know their requirements and that they abide by them. So any issues with guide dogs or anything else that you see out in the community, restaurants, stores, things like that, you can definitely report to our office and we will see what we can do. We work closely with the licensing board of the city. If these places have licenses and say they don't have captions on, we passed a captions ordinance a few years ago, you can complain to us and we can work with the businesses to ensure that they are meeting their responsibilities under the ADA. With that, though, I have no more remarks, but just to thank everybody for coming. It's 3:35, so I think we got a lot of great information out, and like we said, we'll send a follow-up email to everyone on Zoom and registrants here who left their email. We'll send you the annual report, and we look forward to seeing you at ADA Day on July 17th.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Carl?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Charlie.